Rain hammered Emily Carter's windshield as she navigated empty midnight streets. Exhaustion weighed heavy after another double shift. The diner had been demanding, and now she pulled late-night rideshare hours to make ends meet. Rent was due in 3 days, and Benjamin needed new shoes. Her phone buzzed with a priority pickup from the Meridian Hotel downtown. Emily sighed and tapped accept. Wealthy clients usually meant better tips. The hotel's golden facade glowed as she pulled up to the entrance, where elegantly dressed guests huddled under umbrellas. Standing apart was a tall man in an expensive black suit, bow tie undone. He held a crystal glass while staring at wet pavement with profound disappointment. Emily checked her app Alexander S. and rolled down her window. "Are you Alexander?" she called over the rain. He looked up with tired, bloodshot eyes, nodded wordlessly, and slipped into the backseat. "I just want to go home," he muttered, his voice thick with exhaustion. The destination loaded automatically, an exclusive hillside neighborhood Emily had never visited. As they drove through rain-soaked streets, silence filled the car except for rhythmic raindrops. After several minutes, Alexander's voice cut through the quiet. "Do you ever feel like everyone's pretending? Like no one actually cares unless there's something in it for them?" Emily glanced at him through the rearview mirror, seeing past expensive clothes to vulnerability beneath. "More than you'd think," she replied honestly. "I drive strangers every night. Most barely acknowledge I exist. But I keep showing up because my son needs the lights on." "What's his name?" Alexander asked. "Benjamin. He's 5. Emily answered softly. "That's a good age. Kids still believe in good things." "He does," she said. "I'm trying to protect that innocence as long as possible." Alexander leaned his head against the window. "Must be nice being needed for who you are, not what you provide." Emily studied his reflection, polished and expensive on the surface, but hollow underneath. She didn't know she was speaking to Alexander Stone, CEO of one of the country's fastest-growing tech empires. To her, he was simply a man struggling to hold himself together for one more night. When they reached Alexander's glass mansion nestled high in the hills, Emily brought the car to a gentle stop. She turned to find him fast asleep, head tilted against the window, one arm resting across his lap. His face looked younger in sleep, vulnerable and peaceful. Instead of waking him, Emily reached behind her seat and retrieved her faded denim jacket. Carefully, she draped it over his chest like a blanket. Then she stepped into the rain and walked to the mansion's intercom. "Yes?" came a formal voice through the crackling speaker. "I brought Mr. Stone home. He's asleep in the car. Could someone help him inside?" Within minutes, a uniformed staff member jogged down the driveway with an umbrella. Emily opened the car door carefully. "He's fine, just exhausted," she assured the man, who helped Alexander into the house. Emily drove away without asking who he really was. To her, he was simply a person who needed to get home safely. Alexander woke the next morning to pristine white linens and rain tapping against floor-to-ceiling windows. His head pounded, and his mouth felt like cotton. The last clear memory was the charity gala, endless small talk and fake smiles over champagne. On a bench near his bedroom door lay a folded denim jacket that wasn't his. And beside it, a small piece of paper. "I brought you home safely. No extra charge. Sleep well. Emily C." Alexander stared at the note, genuinely moved. In his world, people who witnessed vulnerability usually wanted something in return. This woman had left behind only kindness and a signature that felt more like a gentle whisper than a transaction. Later that morning, still unsettled, Alexander asked Marcus, his assistant, to look up Emily Carter. By noon, they stood outside Rosie's Diner on 5th Street, a modest establishment that smelled of bacon grease and years of stories. Inside, Emily moved efficiently behind the counter, blonde hair tucked under a brown uniform cap. When she turned and saw him, her steps faltered in recognition. "Hi," Alexander said with a genuine smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting your shift." Emily looked between him and Marcus, confused. "You're the guy from last night." "Alexander Stone," he confirmed. "I wanted to thank you properly for getting me home. For the note, and for this." He held up her jacket. She nodded toward it. "I figured you'd want it back. I don't usually leave notes. But you looked like someone who could use a little kindness." Marcus took a seat at the far end of the counter, giving them privacy. Alexander leaned casually against the counter. Would you let me take you to lunch? A proper thank you? Emily wiped her hands on her apron, shaking her head politely. That's kind, but I can't. I have to pick up my son from school at 1 o'clock. Alexander checked his watch. It's only 11:30. I still need to finish my shift. Get home, change clothes, and travel across town. They're strict about pickup times, and I won't be late for Benjamin. She wasn't apologizing, just explaining her reality with the matter-of-fact tone of someone who had learned to prioritize what truly mattered. You're turning down lunch with a millionaire tech CEO to pick up a 5-year-old? Alexander asked, half smiling. I'd turn down lunch with the president if it meant being late for Benjamin. Emily replied without hesitation. Alexander laughed, really laughed. Not the polished sound he produced in boardrooms, but something genuine. That's refreshingly honest. Most people would at least pretend to consider the offer. I don't have the luxury of pretending when it comes to my son, Emily said simply. He looked at her differently then, seeing past the uniform to the person beneath, the woman who had driven him home without judgment, asked for nothing, and treated him like just another human being. You're not like anyone else I've known, he said quietly. Emily gave a small, almost amused smile. That's probably a good thing. From that night forward, Alexander began requesting rideshare rides more frequently than necessary. More often than not, Emily was the driver who responded. Emily never questioned the pattern. She simply showed up, asked for the destination, and drove. Sometimes they traveled across town. Other times they circled blocks for no apparent reason. In the quiet sanctuary of those car rides, something began to develop between them, not attraction, not yet, but a profound understanding between two people from different worlds. One evening, Emily shared her story with characteristic honesty. He left when I was 7 months pregnant, she said matter-of-factly. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. I came home from work one day, and half the apartment was empty. Alexander turned in his seat. You were still working that far along? Emily shrugged. I had to. Bills don't stop because your heart is broken. What about family support? My mother passed when I was 17. Never knew my father. There's an aunt in Michigan, but we haven't spoken in years. It's just Benjamin and me now. Alexander nodded slowly. That's an enormous responsibility. Emily smiled sadly. You learn to make $30 stretch across a week, and you pray your child doesn't notice when you cry in the bathroom after bedtime. Alexander didn't try to fix her or offer empty comfort. He simply listened, which meant more than any solution could have. Another day, Emily asked with genuine curiosity. What about you, Mr. CEO? Big house, personal staff, probably a helicopter on standby? Alexander chuckled. All of that, yes, but you know what I don't have? What? People I can trust. My former best friend tried to sell the company behind my back. 6 years of work nearly destroyed in a single handshake. My parents only call when they need a successful-looking son for their charity photos. They don't care how I'm doing, just that I still look the part. Emily's expression softened. That's worse than not having a personal chef. I built something impressive, he continued, but some nights it feels like I built a glass prison. Everyone can see me, but no one can really get close. That's the loneliest kind of success, Emily said quietly. Then one Wednesday afternoon, everything changed. Emily picked Alexander up from his downtown office building, but her hands trembled on the steering wheel, and her voice was thinner than usual. Are you all right? Alexander asked immediately. No, Benjamin has a high fever. The daycare called, and I'm supposed to take another fare after this, but I need to get to him. Go, Alexander said without hesitation. I'll come with you. Emily paused, uncertain, but something in his voice made her nod. They drove in focused silence to the brick daycare building. Emily rushed inside while Alexander waited, and she returned minutes later carrying Benjamin, flushed and drowsy, in her arms. Without being asked, Alexander got out and opened the passenger door. Let me drive, he said calmly. What? Emily blinked in surprise. You shouldn't drive when you're this worried. Where's the nearest hospital? At the emergency room. Emily disappeared behind double doors with Benjamin. Alexander found a chair in the waiting area and stayed. 4 hours passed. People came and went. Nurses called names. Phones rang constantly. Alexander didn't move from his corner seat. Emily's denim jacket folded carefully in his lap. When Emily finally emerged, tired but relieved, with Benjamin sleeping peacefully in her arms, She found Alexander exactly where she'd left him. "You stayed," she said, her voice thick with emotion. Alexander stood. "Of course I did." Her eyes filled with tears. "No one has ever done that before." He gave her a gentle smile. "Now someone has." That moment changed everything. In a sterile hospital waiting room, surrounded by strangers and uncertainty, they had become something more than acquaintances sharing car rides. They had become people who stayed for each other. The photograph was blurry and poorly lit. Alexander walking out of the children's hospital with his hand resting protectively on Emily's back as she carried Benjamin. The image quality was terrible, but it was enough to ignite a media firestorm. Within 24 hours, tabloid headlines screamed, "Tech mogul's secret family. Who is the blonde with the baby? Billionaire CEO's hospital mystery woman." The speculation was relentless and invasive. Emily discovered the headlines during her lunch break at the diner. Her stomach dropped as she read the comments. Wild theories, harsh judgments, and assumptions that painted her as everything from a gold digger to a secret nanny. None came close to the truth. But that didn't matter. Coworkers whispered behind her back. Her boss gave her suspicious looks. The comfortable anonymity she'd worked so hard to maintain was shattered in a single news cycle. That evening, Emily's phone buzzed with a message from Alexander. "Can we talk?" They met at a quiet cafe tucked into the corner of an independent bookstore. Alexander was already there, seated in the back with a baseball cap pulled low over his recognizable features. "I'm sorry," he said before Emily even sat down. "I never meant for this to happen." Emily took the seat across from him, folding her arms defensively. "You didn't take the photograph." "No, but I should have anticipated that someone would. I know how this world works." She nodded, biting her lip. "It's not just the photo. People at work are talking. My boss looked at me today like I'd done something wrong just by knowing you. I want to fix this," Alexander said earnestly, "which is why I'd like to make you an offer." Emily's eyebrows rose. "What kind of offer?" "I want you to be my official personal driver. I'll handle the media attention. But I want you to be financially secure and have some protection from all this noise. The salary would be substantially more than you're making now." Emily stared at him. "How much more?" "5 times more. Actually, you could leave the diner. Set your own schedule. Spend more time with Benjamin." Emily exhaled slowly. The offer was tempting. God, it was tempting, but something inside her recoiled. "I can't take money from someone just because they feel sorry for me," she said, her voice low but firm. Alexander leaned forward. "Do you think this is pity? I think maybe you feel responsible for me now. Because I was there when you were vulnerable. Because you think you owe me something." Alexander shook his head. "Emily, I don't want to rescue you. I want to work with you. I want a partner who doesn't see me as a walking bank account. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" She looked away, blinking back unexpected emotion. "It just feels like too much." "Can I ask you something?" Alexander said, his voice gentler now. Emily nodded slowly. "When was the last time someone asked what you wanted? Not what Benjamin needs. Not what your job demands. Just you." "Emily Carter, what do you want? Do you even remember?" Her breath caught. The question hit her like a physical blow because she couldn't answer it. She genuinely couldn't remember the last time someone had asked her what she wanted for herself. "No," she whispered. "I don't remember." Alexander leaned back, watching her carefully. "Then maybe that's the real problem. You've spent so long surviving that you've forgotten you're allowed to want something for yourself." Those words broke something open inside Emily. She turned her face away as tears slipped down her cheeks, not dramatic sobs. Just the quiet acknowledgement of everything she had buried for too long. "You make it really hard to say no," she said, forcing a shaky smile. "I'm okay with hard," Alexander replied softly, "as long as it's real." Emily looked at him through tear-blurred eyes. "Then let's try real." For several weeks, Emily became part of Alexander's professional world. She drove him to meetings, waited outside glass-walled boardrooms, and occasionally stepped inside to hand him files. Initially, no one paid attention to her. Then people began to notice the woman who spoke only when necessary, who always knew the next destination, who quietly managed details before they became problems. Emily surprised Alexander with her observations. She noticed the junior executive who kept appearing at meetings uninvited, the investor who checked his phone whenever certain financial figures were discussed. "You pay attention," Alexander commented after a particularly tense negotiation. "I have to," Emily replied. "In my world, missing a detail could mean missing a paycheck." Alexander grew accustomed to her presence not just professionally, but personally. Her calm steadiness during car rides, the way she reminded him to eat lunch, how she'd gently tell him when his tone became too sharp in meetings. She never flattered or tiptoed around his ego, and he began to realize how much he relied on her honesty. But comfort can make people careless. During a high-stakes partnership meeting at a luxury hotel, Emily stood in the hallway organizing files while Alexander met with potential investors. She could hear laughter from the conference room, not cruel, just carelessly thoughtless. Then she heard it clearly. "So, Alexander, is the blonde assistant your latest innovation? Mixing business with pleasure these days?" Another voice joined in. "If that's your branding strategy, I'd say it's working." More laughter followed. Emily froze, her hands clenching the folder until her knuckles went white. She waited until the meeting ended, said nothing to Alexander on the way out, didn't mention the comment. She simply dropped him at his office tower, nodded once, and drove away. That night, she didn't show up at the usual time. The next morning, Alexander's calls went unanswered. His texts remained unread. By the second day, he contacted the rideshare platform and confirmed what he already suspected. Emily had resigned without explanation. When his assistant casually mentioned the investor's joke, Alexander's stomach dropped. He understood immediately why she had left. She thought she was just another curiosity, a temporary fixture in a world that would never take her seriously. But she was wrong about one thing, and now she was gone. Alexander sat in his car in the middle of the city, surrounded by everything money could buy, feeling completely powerless. The one person who had never wanted anything from him was the only one he couldn't convince to stay. And for the first time, he realized this wasn't just about losing a driver or an assistant. Emily had become something essential, and now she was simply gone. The morning Alexander appeared at Emily's apartment, the sky was overcast and heavy with unspoken words. He had never been to this part of town except for charitable photo opportunities. The building was old, cracked sidewalks, peeling paint, faded numbers on weather-beaten doors. He knocked twice. Emily opened the door just enough to see him, then leaned against the frame without inviting him inside. "Alexander," she said, her voice carefully neutral. "What are you doing here? I needed to see you. You left without saying anything." Emily folded her arms. "What would you have wanted me to say?" "I'm sorry about the meeting. About what they said." Emily shook her head. "I didn't leave because of what they said. I left because of what you didn't say." Alexander looked down. "I didn't hear it in time. I didn't need you to defend me." Emily interrupted. "I needed to know that I mattered to you beyond your schedule. I've spent too long being someone's afterthought. Alexander, someone's pity project. I fought hard to stand on my own. I didn't come to rescue you." Alexander said quietly, "I came because I miss you. Because I made a mistake. And because I need you, not because I'm lonely, but because I'm more myself around you than I've ever been around anyone." Emily's expression didn't soften. "Goodbye, Alexander." She gently closed the door, leaving him standing in the hallway with nothing but regret. 2 days later, Emily found a letter slipped under her door. She left it on the kitchen counter while she made breakfast for Benjamin, who sat at the table in dinosaur pajamas, coloring enthusiastically. She didn't read the letter immediately, but after Benjamin went down for his nap, she finally sat on the couch and opened it. "Dear Emily, I don't know if you'll read this, but there are things I need to say. I used to dream about a life where I mattered for who I was, not what I'd built. I imagined having a family not for cameras or appearances, but for the quiet moments. A wife who saw me. A child who looked at me like I was something good. When I met you, you didn't see a CEO. You saw a tired man who needed to get home. Since that night, nothing has felt the same. It's felt lighter, truer. I don't want to fix you or change you. I just want to know you again. I miss your honesty. I miss Benjamin's laugh. I miss you. If you can forgive me, I'd like a second chance, not to prove anything, just to be someone worthy of sitting across from you again. Alexander." Emily folded the letter slowly, her throat tightening with unexpected emotion. Later, Benjamin wandered by after his nap, pointing at the letter with 5-year-old curiosity. "Did you write that?" Emily shook her head. "Alexander did." Benjamin stared at it thoughtfully. Then, with the quiet wisdom only children possess, he asked, "Why don't you give him a chance like you do when I mess up? You always say people deserve another chance if they really mean it." That night, after Benjamin was asleep, Emily picked up her phone. Her message was short but significant. "Let's talk soon." There was never a formal conversation about what they were becoming. No labels or definitions were discussed. It simply happened naturally, the way real things do. After Emily's message, they met at a small cafe near her apartment. No cameras, no pressure, just two people sharing the same quiet air and tentative hope. From then on, they spent more time together. Real time, not scheduled appointments. Alexander stopped sending drivers. Instead, he appeared himself, often carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing that soft, uncertain smile that never fully settled until Benjamin ran to greet him with an enthusiastic shout of Alexander. They went to the park on Sundays. Benjamin brought his entire collection of plastic dinosaurs. Emily brought books she rarely opened because she was too busy watching Alexander learn how to build sand castles and push swings with the careful attention of someone discovering joy for the first time. One Saturday morning, Emily walked into her kitchen to find Alexander at the stove, sleeves rolled up, attempting to flip something misshapen in her ancient pan. "What are you doing?" she asked, crossing her arms and fighting laughter. "Trying to impress your son," Alexander replied seriously. "He informed me that his pancakes usually have eyes and legs." Emily laughed freely, completely, and the sound caught Alexander off guard. He paused to watch her, and for a moment, the modest kitchen felt more like home than his mansion ever had. She joined him at the stove, showing him how to add blueberries for eyes and banana slices for dinosaur features. Though the pancakes were far from perfect, Benjamin declared them the best space dinosaur pancakes in the entire galaxy. They never explicitly discussed love, but it lived in every small gesture, in the way Alexander helped Benjamin tie his shoes, how Emily saved him the crispiest corner of her homemade lasagna, how he stayed later each visit and never needed a reason to return. When Alexander's birthday approached, Emily asked what he wanted to do. "I don't really celebrate," he said. "It's always been boardroom lunches or media events. People come because they're supposed to, not because they want to." Emily didn't argue, but on the evening of his birthday, Alexander walked into her apartment to find paper streamers stretched across the ceiling, a handmade paper crown on the table, and a slightly lopsided chocolate cake with one crooked candle. Benjamin wore a party hat and beamed with pride. Emily stood in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Benjamin insisted," she said simply. Alexander stared at the cake for a long time before whispering, "No one has ever done this for me." Emily smiled. "It's not much. It's everything." That night, Alexander didn't go home. They didn't cross any romantic lines. They simply fell asleep on the couch with Benjamin curled between them. The apartment filled with the lingering scent of chocolate cake and something warmer, something that felt like belonging. A few weeks later, Alexander invited Emily to his company's product launch, a high-profile event in the heart of the city. Emily hesitated at first. "Are you sure you want me there? I don't exactly blend in with that crowd." Alexander's answer was immediate. "That's exactly why I want you there. You remind me why I started this company in the first place." Emily wore a simple navy dress, nothing extravagant. Her hair fell in loose waves around her shoulders. At the venue entrance, Alexander met her, offered his arm with quiet pride, and walked her inside, not as an accessory or a statement, but as a choice that mattered. The media noticed immediately. Within hours, headlines appeared. Alexander Stone's mystery date stuns at launch and the woman behind the tech titan's transformation. Alexander ignored all of it. But when Emily scrolled through an article titled "The Woman Who Melted the Ice King's Heart," she couldn't help but laugh. "You're famous again," she teased. Alexander smiled, something peaceful and certain in his eyes. "Not for what I built this time, but for who I'm building a life with." Months later, they returned to the park where it all began, the same bench by the duck pond, the same rusty swings, the same food truck selling average sandwiches that somehow tasted perfect under the open sky. Emily sat beside Alexander, her shoes brushing against gravel while Benjamin chased squirrels across the grass, his laughter echoing through the trees. "This is where it started," Alexander said, handing her half of a sandwich. "The first time I realized I could breathe again." Emily smiled. The day Benjamin spilled juice on your expensive shoes. Still worth it? More than worth it. Alexander paused, then added, it feels like the right place for something else. 2. He pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Emily's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple gold band with one small engraving. One day at a time. Alexander looked at her with nervous certainty. I'm not promising perfection. I'll mess up sometimes. But I promise I'll stay through the hard parts. The messy parts. The unknown parts. Emily looked at the ring. Then at him, the same man who had once sat broken in her car now looking at her like she was his whole direction home. If you think I'm going to become some polished society wife who fits perfectly into your world charity galas, designer gowns, the answer is no. I don't want that, Alexander said firmly. But if you want something real, something we build from scratch, one burnt pancake at a time, then yes. Alexander let out a shaky laugh and slipped the ring onto her finger. Then kissed her hand gently. Benjamin ran over, cheeks flushed from playing. Are we going home now? He asked. Emily looked at Alexander, then back at her son. Yeah, sweetheart, we are. The wedding was intimate, held in the backyard of their new house, not enormous, but warm and filled with love. Only 20 guests attended, a few colleagues, Emily's neighbor, and Benjamin's favorite teachers. Fairy lights twinkled in the trees, and cupcakes replaced a traditional wedding cake. Benjamin carried the rings with serious 5-year-old responsibility. Emily wore a vintage dress she had altered herself. Alexander wore no tie. What guests remembered most was Alexander's mother, elegant and usually reserved, crying silently as her son read his vows with his hand trembling in Emily's. I've made money, Alexander said, his voice thick with emotion. But this is the first time I've made something real. Later that evening, on the rooftop of their home, the city lights flickered below like fallen stars. Alexander sat with Emily beside him and Benjamin between them, wrapped in a soft blanket covered in constellations. Emily rested her head on Alexander's shoulder. Happy? Alexander exhaled slowly, contentedly. I used to think I needed someone who would make me sharper, push me to achieve more, do more. He looked down at Benjamin, already drifting towards sleep. But what I really needed, he whispered, was someone who made me want to be the kind of man this little boy could call dad. Emily reached for his hand without words, just warmth and understanding. And beneath the stars, in the quiet of a life they had built together from nothing but hope and honesty, Alexander knew he was finally, truly home. Sometimes love finds us in the quietest, most unexpected moments, in the spaces between one breath and the next, in the simple act of seeing someone clearly and choosing to stay.